and welcome to Meet the Red Cross. I'm Dave Griffith, the Executive Director of the Red Cross's Heart of Missouri chapter. And on the show with me today, I have two guests. On the first part of the show, I have Hal Dulle, who is one of our board members. And on the second half of the show, I've got Steve Wise, who is one of our seasoned volunteers. Hal, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David.
Hal, you might just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know most of the people here in Jefferson City know who you are. They've heard your voice on the radio, on the morning show at KWOS, but just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as a lot of people know, I was born and raised here. Spent most of my life here. I went to St. Peter's Grade School, graduated Elias High School. Went to the University of Missouri, ended up getting a degree in economics from Lincoln University. Consequently, I ended up in the United States Marine Corps, did the tour of duty in Nam. Came back and went to work for the Missouri Public Service Commission and worked with them for about 10 or 12 years. Had an opportunity to go with the Missouri Chamber of Commerce. Got into legislative affairs at the Chamber of Commerce, and I liked that. I liked the legislative activity. Was offered a position as Director of Governmental Relations with the Gas Service Company in Kansas City. Was with them for 14 years, and then had the opportunity to go to work for the Missouri Veterans Commission. Worked for them for 10 years, and started out as Deputy Director, and the last 3 years as Executive Director. Been on the Red Cross Board, I don't know how many years now. Been on it a couple times. A little bit about that involvement when I was overseas in the Marine Corps. The two civilian organizations that were instrumental in most military people at that time was the USO and the Red Cross. You know, today I marvel at we have laptops and we have iPhones and we have instant communications and emails back and forth. And I think most of the people that go in now will go to, say, like Afghanistan or Iraq and take their laptop with them in instant communications. But back in the 60s, when we were in Southeast Asia, you didn't have that kind of communications, and especially in emergency situations. And the Red Cross stepped in and really helped out when there were a family crisis or a medical crisis or some type of crisis back home. They were instrumental in it. So I became very familiar and very fond of the work of the Red Cross. And then probably about 15 years ago, as a member of the Marine Corps League, Steve Bauer and I started cooking up at Schulte's, which is, most Jefferson Cityans know, every Saturday at Schulte's somebody is barbecuing for somebody. And one of the weekends each year, we cook for the Red Cross. And they have a, as you full well know now as Executive Director, a fund called the Armed Forces Emergency Assistance Program. And Steve and I would cook one Saturday of the month, and that money would go toward that fund, which helps, even today, the Red Cross providing assistance, communications assistance, whatever assistance, on family emergencies. Unfortunately, when you're serving overseas, not everything stays the same back home. You'll have medical emergencies, deaths in the family, something that would cause that serviceman to have to return home, and Red Cross helps on that. But we did that for several years. And one of our senior board members, Ralph Robinette, approached me while we were cooking one day and asked me if I'd be interested in joining the board, and reminded me that I have a legacy because my little brother Sid had served on the Red Cross board years prior to that. So I accepted that and came on the board and have served and have really enjoyed it. And we've gone through quite a bit, as you have, and it brings me to today, and that's why I'm here as a board member of the American Red Cross.
One of the things that you brought up, Hal, and I think it's a very good point, and something that our audience really needs to understand, is that because of the Congressional Charter of 1902, a lot of people think that the Red Cross has an affiliation, a direct affiliation with the government. And as you know, we don't. But because of that Congressional Charter, the American Red Cross is the only organization that can deal directly with the military and deliver those emergency messages.
Absolutely.
And be an effective tool and fill that gap and get those soldiers back here for those emergencies and those deaths that they need to be here for.
And that's the relationship back in the 1960s that struck me, what a close working relationship there was. You know, the military really works hand in hand with the Red Cross, and you know, the people that volunteer, and most of our people are volunteers, really are task oriented. And I can't think of all the times where somebody serving with me in Vietnam or Guam or one of the islands out in the Pacific would get that bad phone call that something happened back home. But it was always amazing the logistics that was put in place by the Red Cross to get that service person back home, whatever it took, and take care of the emergency, and then turn around and return him back to duty. Yeah. And that still happens today.
And it really is, and we're doing more and more, and as soldiers are returning home, and if there is a tragedy, the Red Cross is trying to be there for that family and to help them through that transition period as well. So.
And that spills over into another service that we're very close to, and that's disasters and fires and things here. It seems like almost every day we're responding to type fire, and I know, it's very unfortunate what happened down in Joplin and Branson and some of the Sedalia and some of the other areas, but, for a family that loses everything, and I just cannot imagine the devastation on losing all your belongings and everything in a fire, and knowing that somebody will step up, us and our volunteers, to be there to provide whatever it is to get them back on their feet, especially in the first 24, 48 hours. Nobody goes through any training for this. I mean, I haven't, and I don't think you have. I don't know what it would be like to in a moment's time, lose everything and standing outside with what you have on, and that's all you own anymore. And that's something I'm real proud that we do and the service we provide.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your service to our country, and I appreciate what you've done for us and what you continue to do for us. But tell us about what you feel that your role as a board member. What do you think that your role as a board member and how you can be effective in that position?
My role as a board member is actually to provide services to you as the executive director and your operations. Whether it's financial support through fundraising efforts, through entities like this, on being in the public media and advising people of what we do. A lot of people, we talk about the blood side of our business, and we talk about the emergency assistance side of our business. We talk about the services, the CPR courses, and the first aid, the swimming program. I need to constantly remind the community of those services and the needs to raise finances to provide those services. So I look at myself as a supporter of the operations and an interface between what you all do on a day-to-day basis on operations and the community at large, and be an ambassador for the local chapter.
You talk about fundraising, and we've got some fundraising opportunities that are coming up here in the very near future. The Lifesaver Awards is something that we changed the name this year to, and for a long time, and this goes back to the Melissa Friel days, it was known as the Day of Heroes. I think it first started off as the Heart of a Hero, and
yes,
it was held so close to the Heart Association's Heart Month that we changed it to the Day of Heroes, and now to the Lifesaver Awards. Tell us about what you think that this type of an event has for our community, and what impact that has for the Red Cross.
Well, I think it crystallizes what we were just talking about, on community awareness. Not only what the services that we provide, but also individuals on a yearly basis that provides life-saving events for people, provide community service to our fellow man. And basically, it's a microcosm of what the Red Cross does day in and day out, but it recognizes those people within our own community that may not be a member of the Red Cross, may have never done anything for the Red Cross, but epitomizes through their actions what we're all about with regard to taking care of one another and providing maybe life-changing events for their fellow citizens.
Well, I think you probably would agree that when we had the Day of Heroes, I served on that committee for a couple of years, and it was hard to get nominations, because most people, when they think of a hero, it's hard to really put a face to that. And what I also found is that those people that were heroes don't want to be called heroes. They do what they do because that's what they do. That's the natural thing for them. By changing the name of this to the Lifesaver Awards, I think it really it wraps us around really what we do every day in the American Red Cross. The life-saving services that we offer with lifeguarding and swimming classes, to CPR and AED and first aid classes. And so the categories that we've got it really help us to identify those, and they are heroes to us. But those are going to be, we're going to be having that event on the 26th of June in North Jefferson City at the Pavilion. We're going to have a barbecue, so Hal, we may have to bring you out to, since you're a real old hand at that barbecuing, to help us barbecue some hamburgers and hot dogs.
And I think that's a tremendous change that I really really enjoy, is moving it from a structured banquet facility type thing to sort of an informal, at the pavilion over in Old Cedar City, more of an informal thing. The importance of recognizing the lifesavers is important, but not putting them on hero status. I don't think that's what people are into it for, but you got to recognize those people. And I think it's important that people who are aware of people like that, and I know it's hard to solicit, but you know, if people know of somebody that has done something that would be worthy of lifesaver, to let us know. It does twofold. It recognizes that person, and it also helps bring awareness to that type of thing. And I hope I never put in that situation. But if I am, just sort of like in the military, you just don't know what's going to happen in an event that saves somebody's life. You know, the Day of Valor show that recently was on, you know, where a Navy SEAL jumped on a hand grenade. I don't know if I could do that, but if it ever presented itself, you'd like to think that maybe that's the right thing to do. It may not be the best thing to do, but the right thing to do given the alternatives. And it's the same with what we try to recognize to people. It's not something they seek out, but it's something that did happen. And we'd like to recognize and let people in the community know that other people do hero-rated stuff. And I think that's important. And to do it in the middle of a barbecue, I can't think of a better thing.
Well, and it is. And I think the more people that we can get engaged in what the Red Cross does, and let them know that that we are more. And a lot of people, when they think of the Red Cross, they think about blood services, and that is a key and a very vital service that the Red Cross offers. But the other things that go unnoticed until we have an event like Joplin or Sedalia or Branson, until we're thrust to and have that disaster response, we're kind of back in the back of the limelight, and that's okay. But we are also there serving clients every day that have lost their home, that are standing outside their house, like you said, with only the shirt on their back and that's it, and being able to respond that way.
You know, that's why it's hard to try to size up financial wherewithal, because we're a reactionary agency. You know, we don't dictate what the workload is going to be over the course of a year. You know, we definitely have to make the commitment that when there is a calamity, such as a fire, that we're there. And we have to have the financial wherewithal and the volunteer wherewithal to be able to respond to those. And that's why we're constantly asking the community to support what we do.
Well, and you bring up a very good point there, and that's one of the things with the Lifesaver Awards. With each one of these awards has an award sponsor. And with the Central Bank and the Jefferson Bank and Boone County Bank, having them, CenturyLink, Center for Pain Management, those kind of folks that have really seen the vision of what we do, have stepped up and have become a sponsor. And Center for Pain Management, Dee Dee Shelton, she was key in getting all this started way back when. And it's those kind of partners that we have that help us to continue the mission that we do every day. And any other kind of fundraiser that you can think that might be of value to the American Red Cross that are there in the near future somewhere? Something
that sometimes people get confused about. The United Way is very supportive of and providing us financial wherewithal, but it's only a portion of what our annual expenditures are, and we look to the community. And we're trying to find a vehicle, as you know, of trying to reach out to the community for financial assistance in a way that they would understand the importance of providing additional financial services to the Red Cross. And hopefully we'll have some good announcements here in the next few months on how we'll be able to do that.
Okay. Well, Hal, I appreciate you being with us today. I appreciate what you've done for our community, appreciate what you've done for our country in service to that. And I really appreciate you being on our board of directors.
I appreciate it. It's an honor to be on the board and the work we do. And I can't think of a better endeavor than to work on behalf of the Heart of America chapter of the American Red Cross.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with if we come back from the break, and Steve Wise, our volunteer, will be with us and we'll be sharing his story. Thank you.
So my uncle calls and he says he's dizzy and he's losing his balance. I'm like, Unc, you want me to take you to a doctor? He's like, no, I'm gonna look up the symptoms. I said, your symptoms are you're dizzy and you're losing your balance. So he said, I can't get on the internet because my arm is numb. I said, well, use your good arm and dial 911. Stroke's no joke. If you or someone you love is showing symptoms of stroke, Don't wait, because it might be too late. Dial 911. Time lost is brain lost.
Here's a question for you. If you're only willing to use your safety belts part of the time, which part are you willing to give up?
You could learn a lot from a dummy. Buckle your safety belt.
Welcome back to Meet the Red Cross. I'm Dave Griffith, the Executive Director of the Heart of Missouri Chapter, and joining me for the second half of our show today is Steve Wise, and Steve is one of our stellar volunteers. We have a number of volunteers that are serving in our chapter, and Steve is one of those. And Steve, I just want to welcome you to the show today.
Thank you.
Steve, you might just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with the Red Cross.
I grew up in Columbia, Missouri, and I worked for Kinko's and went all around the country, and I was looking to get back to the mid-Missouri, and there was a store in Jeff City that needed an assistant manager, so I came back to Jeff City was the location, and I was there for about 6 years and looked for something different, something with more, that I could put my heart into. And I left Kinko's in 2003 and stopped by the Red Cross to get my first aid and CPR updated. And that's when I was introduced to the disaster part of Red Cross. I knew what the health and safety part, but I was never introduced to the disaster, and I took a real liking to it. And so I took a lot of classes and just progressed on my way up through Red Cross, trying to figure out where I fit in best.
Okay. Now, I understand that you are working on a resource book, and you might tell us about that book and why that book is important.
The resource book is a book that we are putting together that has 13 different categories from each county we have that we serve. We serve 11 counties in the central Missouri area, from Callaway all the way down to Denton, Crawford County. And each county holds specific resources, and we need to know what those resources are. What are the towns in each county? What are the churches, schools? Who's the emergency manager for the county? Some of the communities also have emergency managers. Do they have fire departments, and where are they located? So we need to know what's available in each county, so if something were to happen in that county, we would be able to respond with the resources that are located in that county.
Okay. Now, the Heart of Missouri chapter covers 21 counties, and so you've got 13 of those that you're working on. Is there some time in the very near future we're looking at adding those 8 that are in the northern sector?
The northern sector is with the Columbia chapter, and I believe they are also working on a resource book in their area as well.
Okay. How long have you been working on this particular project?
I was introduced to it. I came back in November. I have another job that takes me away from Red Cross for whiles at a time, and when I come back, I'm always interested in new things that's going on at the chapter. And so we worked on it from November to we're still working on it.
Okay. Well, I've only been with the Red Cross for 2 months, but as much as I saw you in there, I thought you were a full-time employee for a long time. So, but I want to tell you how much we appreciate,
thank you.
Appreciate the volunteering that you do with us. You might tell us that when disaster strikes in an area of the state, you have a unique role. You might tell us about what that is.
I volunteer as a government liaison with the state. Since we're the state chapter at the county, at the state level where the capital is, our chapter is responsible for responding to the State Emergency Operations Center and having someone from our chapter be a liaison to the rest of the state to provide information to what Red Cross and what other volunteer agencies are doing in response to that disaster, whether it's cleanup teams, shelter teams, feeding, whatever is going on. The state wants to have a report of what's going on so they have a handle on how the people in the state are being helped and recovering.
Okay. Now we have the Emergency Operations Center that we have with SEMA that's out in the National Guard building.
Yes, sir.
Recently, you were deployed out there for that. You might tell us about that experience.
I got a phone call about, I was watching tornadoes all Thursday night hit around Branson, in that area, Buffalo, and I was watching it to about 1 o'clock in the morning, them hitting, knowing that something was going to happen and we would respond. 4:30 in the morning, Philip called me and said, hey, the state's opening up the EOC, can you get out there? So I quickly got my stuff together and ran out to the EOC and met with Dante, who's the FOAD organization chief for the state. And we kind of made up a plan of how are we going to get the information, who's responding and who needs to report and what reports and what shelters are open, how many do we have in the shelters, where our feeding stations going to be set up, how many people are affected, that kind of type of work.
The EOC, when you go out there to that, how many people are out there and how does that operation work?
It varies on disaster. Depends on what time and what the disaster is. During the flooding event this last year in the May to June, it was full of all the state agencies that were responding to it. Each agency has a certain desk that they sit at, and you communicate with them and with other agencies that are out in the communities. And we had, for the disaster that was in Branson with the tornadoes this spring, we had about half, it was half full of different agencies that were responding, from Missouri Highway Patrol, Water Patrol, National Guard was there, just a lot of different agencies.
Okay. As a volunteer, when you go out there and you are at the EOC, how long were you out there this last time?
I was out there for about 4 or 5 days.
And you stayed out there the whole time?
My day was about 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. And if they were sometimes they do have a 24-hour, so we would split up in 2 teams and have a team there in the evening and the night. This one they just had the 7 to 7 shift going for this disaster. When we had the disaster with the flooding, it was 24/7, so we were there. We had 2 people there, 12-hour shifts.
Well, we want to thank you for volunteering for doing that. That's
you.
quite a commitment. But now, as a volunteer, can you tell us a story or something that has happened in responding to a disaster, whether it be a local fire or whether it be a nationwide disaster? Can you tell us something and how that impacted you and how you saw the Red Cross's role in that?
Well, yeah, with working with partners of all the agencies in the state and in central Missouri, I've had the opportunity to do on exercises with certain people, like the Callaway Nuclear Power Plant. We exercise with them. ConocoPhillips, we do exercises with them. Well, when the hurricane Katrina hit in Mississippi and Louisiana, I was stationed at Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi, as a volunteer agency liaison at the time. And they had, it was 3 hours from the coast, but they still had a lot of wind damage in Jackson, and a lot of trees, and big, magnolia trees that pulled down a lot of power lines, so there was a lot of power outages. There was a lot of gas lines pulled up from the roots, a lot of water lines, so there was rationing of water, rationing of gas, rationing of electricity. And with my contacts here in the chapter, I was able to hook up with the ConocoPhillips and have them bring a tanker of gasoline down to the headquarters, so we could fill our Red Cross vehicles with gasoline so we could be able to go out and do what we needed to do in the state.
Okay. Now, during Katrina, when you were down there, how many people did we have that were from our local chapter here that responded down there with you?
With me,
or just total, not just with you.
I really don't have a number because my job and my role was away from everyone else. I do know of 3 or 4 other volunteers that were working in sheltering, working in feeding and things, but I really didn't get to see a lot of them because I was at the headquarters and they were out at shelters or they were out with the emergency vehicle providing food and feeding operations. So my role is kind of removed from the immediate disaster, but I'm working to make sure everything gets taken care of so they can do their job.
Okay. So how did you get to that responsibility? How did you, as a volunteer, how did you get to the point where they're assigning you that huge responsibility?
I worked for the small tornado flooding in Nebraska. I was being mentored by another emergency services person here at the chapter, and she took me up there, and we worked with all the partners in Nebraska to work up a matrix for the local chapters so they would have a resource, because they didn't have any resources. They didn't know who was providing services in the county. So we worked up a log and a Excel spreadsheet that the locals could use to figure out who could respond and what they offered in their services. So working with that, then they called me out because Katrina was much bigger and they needed someone that had done some work like that.
Okay. When the event that happened on May 22nd last year in Joplin, were you involved with that at all?
No, I was already deployed with my other job, so I was not able to respond with Red Cross at the time.
Okay. Well, when we have an event like that with Branson, or we have an event with like Joplin, or the flooding we had down in the Cape Girardeau area, a lot of people look at that and they say, I'd really like to help, and I'd like to do something. Obviously, they can't just get in their cars and they can't go down there. If somebody's got a passion for doing that, Steve, what would you recommend, and how can they become engaged and to be a part of that?
I'd ask them to stop by the chapter and talk to one of the people at the chapter, and we'd help them fill out an application form, and then we'd sit down and visit with them, and we talked about what their passions are, what are they looking for out of their life, and try to meet their objectives with what we have to offer to our volunteers.
Well, Steve, I can't tell you enough how much we appreciate what you do, and we are very blessed in this part of the country that we've got 340 volunteers like Steve that respond at all hours of the day and night to the needs that we have of our citizens. And if you would like to become involved with the American Red Cross, like Steve said, stop by and see us. We'd be glad to give you the information and try and find a fit for you as to what is right and would work for you. On behalf of the American Red Cross, the Heart of Missouri chapter, I'm Dave Griffith, and I want to thank you for being with us today.